Let's get ready to rumble.
Yes, we're back. It is episode 55 of the Hibs Ramble. It's Liam here, your host for tonight, and with me, it's the very handsome, the very lovely Mr. Marc Duncan. How on earth are you getting on, my friend?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. It's good to be back. I've had a bit of a hiatus, so apologies. I obviously was in Switzerland, had to recover from that, and then unfortunately I came down with a bout of COVID, which struck me down for a couple of weeks. So I'm back. I'm fit, not physically fit, but I'm not ill anymore. So yeah, let's kick
You're
off.
back. You're match fit. You're ready for the stag do at the weekend.
I am ready for the stag do at the weekend. I collected my Euros today, actually.
Nice one. I got my Euros the other day.
I am
very much looking forward to it.
I'm very much looking forward to it as well.
It should be good.
Can't wait to drink a lot of Steins.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Smoke probably at least 150 fags.
Yeah, we're going to Dusseldorf for my stag do at the weekend, so looking forward to it. But as Mark was telling me just before we came on air that they've got something gruesome for me to wear. Going there. So
we'll be sure to update the Ramble socials with what Liam has to wear in the airport and on Saturday.
Hopefully it's not too bad. But I tell you what, if it's anything to go by with what you are like, then I'm friar tucked. That's all we'll say. But listen, we finally picked up points at the weekend. We beat Aberdeen 2-0 at Pittodrie, a ground that is notoriously difficult for us to get a win at. Did you go to the game or did you watch it on the telly?
No, I was still recovering from COVID, unfortunately. So the next game it'll be at is Kilmarnock away, but I did watch it on the telly.
Yeah, so I watched it on the telly as well. But see, when the lineup first came out, obviously it was David Gray's, well, technically his second game in interim charge, but I don't think we're really going to count Aston Villa his first league game, certainly, and his third interim spell. Were you happy with the lineup?
I wasn't surprised by it. I felt like I was quite surprised in a way with the lineup against Aston Villa, because I felt that we would have, even though we're 5-0 down, we would have maybe put our best team out just to make a good account of ourselves, because there was always a risk that if we had fielded a weakened team, then it could have been anything. But to be fair, we made a good account of ourselves. But there was nothing that really surprised me, to be honest. I'm just looking at the lineup now. It was Miller, Hanlon, Fish and Stevenson along the back. That's pretty much been our back four all season. The only real change in that would be Miller. You know, Miller's sometimes been in and out because of injury and whatnot. I think Diego brings a bit of steel into that midfield that allows Joe Newell to go and play a bit of football, and Josh Campbell. And then, of course, we had Boyle, Yuan and Venti. So there's nothing that surprised me. I felt it was a pretty strong side. And if you were asking me before the game who I would have picked, it would have been fairly close to that, to be honest.
It would have been pretty similar, eh? Well, I mean, it was a pretty uneventful first half. I can't really remember an awful lot of things happening in the first half, but what we will talk about is, those individual performances from those important players that you've highlighted. I've got down here Lafondra, Doidge, Miller and Diego were all standouts for me. Obviously,
David Marshall deserves a wee shout as well. Mm-hmm. He didn't have a whole lot to do, but when he did get called into action, he made a brilliant save.
Yeah, he made a superb save at 1-0, I think.
Was it the start of the second half, I believe? He made a brilliant save to keep it at 0-0. And he done the basics right. He's taken a lot of stick as David Marshall, and I'll be the first to say that I've given him some stick as well. But when you need to give some credit when it's due when he comes out and puts in a decent performance. So fair play to him.
And we'll just touch on the goals quickly before we move on to manager chat. The first one, Adam Lafondra, it's kind of bouncing about the box a little bit, and then it's a lovely cushioned header from Joe Newell into his path. And he said in his post-match when he made the connection, he knew it was going in. It was a wonderful goal, but I just want to hear your thoughts Mark, I said at the start of the season, I reckon Le Fondre will chip in with quite a few goals this season. And he's got 3 in 4 league games already. How important do you actually think he's going to be for us for the remainder of the season?
I think he's playing the role that we all expected him to play, except he's playing it a lot better than maybe what we expected, because we all knew that when we signed Adam Le Fondre, he wasn't going to be the replacement to Kevin Nisbet. Obviously, that turned out to be Dylan Vente. But we knew he was brought in to bring some experience to the pitch for our younger players. And we knew that he's a fox in the box. He's got his football IQ is probably one of the best I've ever seen at Hibs. He's so intelligent, the way he reads the game, and that allows him to come on, and he doesn't need a lot of pace. He doesn't need much because he knows where to be, and then obviously he's got a brilliant finish in him. So I think he's probably just playing the role that we all expected, coming off the bench, chipping in here and there, but he's chipping in a lot more than we would have thought. If you look at that game against Lucerne, he was absolutely vital in that 3-1 win and ultimately getting us through. And then he's chipped in with some league goals, and this really was, he basically scored the winner. He put it at 1-0. So yeah, he's playing a role and he's doing it very well at the moment.
I mean, it's the pick of the bunch of his goals so far this season. I thought it was a wonderful, wonderful finish, and it's one of the things that, as you get older and when you're a professional footballer, maybe your legs go, your pace goes, but I think for strikers that are as clinical as that, who've scored goals wherever they've been, that sort of instinctive finish doesn't really leave you an awful lot. And for 36 years old, how sharp he is, on the edge of the box and, in and around that 20, 25 yards within the goal, he is so sharp. And like you said, his football IQ is, honestly, it's second to none. I'm not too sure what everyone's expectations were when we signed him. Obviously, he came with a lot of kind of hype from England. We've been kind of hyping him up for about 10 years, hoping that we were trying to sign him. But I remember him back when he played for Reading and teams like that down south, and he was just as much a fox in the box, maybe a little less pace now than he did back then. But I remember him being a very, very capable striker, and he's shown that completely so far this season. And it's really good to see at least one striker coming in and scoring plenty of goals for us, because it's not always the case. We're not blessed with a massive, massive budget to go and get players who come in and instantly hit the ground running every single time. So it's very pleasing to the ones that actually do come off. Another striker who I thought had a great game and who's had a great season so far is Christian Doidge, Mark. Another goal on Sunday there. And he's looking like he's going to be, a pivotal part of the squad this season.
Yeah, do you know what? I cannot give Christian Doidge enough credit, because I can only imagine as a football player getting told at the start of a season, essentially, look, we're looking to move you on, we're looking to sort of cash our chips a little bit, get a little bit of cash for you, and you're going to be moved out, especially considering he was shipped out on loan last season.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the fans have said that Doidge isn't good enough. But for him to come in at the start of the season, despite being told that he's getting moved on, and then all of a sudden he's starting games one after the other, he's the starting striker. Then we go and sign a big money striker for 750,000, whatever it is. We've already got, Le Fondre, Melkerson at the time we still had, all of these. And for him to come in and still be fighting, that's the kind of attitude for me that you need as a player. Still not really caring about all the noise and anything.
Mm-hmm.
He's just thinking, as soon as I get a chance to go onto the pitch, I'm going to work my balls off to make sure that if they get rid of me, it's a bad move.
And that's what he does.
For me, he's been the best player for us this season so far. His work rate, his finishing, he's chipped in with some goals. I don't think his goal scoring abilities ever went away. I just think we doubted them for a period of time. And that first goal that we scored, for me, defines how good Christian Doidge is, because the whole Aberdeen defence switched off because they thought that ball was going out for a goal kick.
Mm-hmm.
Doidge is the only one that's alive to that and it's alert to it, and he runs out there, keeps the ball in play, turns round and then dinks it into the box, and then he allows Joe Newell a lovely little touch, which cushions it perfectly, and then Lafondra scores. If Doidge was another player, maybe Venti would have went for it, I don't know, but if it was another player, maybe they wouldn't have ran for that, and all of a sudden we don't get that goal, and maybe we leave with a point, or even Aberdeen snap. Do you know, it's small margins, and for him to go and bust a gut to get that ball, keep it in, and then it turns out to be a goal. And then, of course, his second goal, he's unlucky not to score straight from the corner, but then he's still in there, he's still making a bit of a nuisance of himself, and then when it eventually comes back to him, he's not going to miss that. So I take my hat off to him. His attitude is absolutely brilliant, and that's half the battle for me when you're playing at this level.
Of course, like it speaks volumes about his character. You know, it doesn't mean an awful lot these days. You know, some people will tell you it does, but you know, stripped to the number 9, you know, given a higher number, looked all but set to head out the door. And you know, he could have said, "Nah, I want to stay," and just, you know, stayed and picked up a wage, went through the motions, seen out his contract, because I would imagine that he's on a half decent wage, probably better than he would get, you know, at any other clubs who would be interested. So he could have easily just down tools and said, "I'm going to see out my contract, pick up a wage." But like you said, and I think that bursting for the ball to chuck it into the box for the first goal personifies Christian Doidge as a person. That determination, that eagerness to work for the team, and like you said, I genuinely don't think it has ever gone away. Listen, we're under no illusions. Christian Doidge isn't one of these players who's going to pick up the ball, run 40 yards, and score a screamer from outside the box. He's one of these people who makes a nuisance of himself in the box, and that showed from, you know, before he went out on loan to Kilmarnock. Like, all the goals that he scored more or less were, you know, him just being a bit of a nuisance in the box. And I think that's what we missed a lot last year. You know, we put a lot of balls into the box, and there wasn't anyone there to convert. And you know, with Doidge here this year, maybe Venti's going to be a little bit more of an aerial threat. I just think we're a different. We've got a little bit of a different dynamic going forward this year. Last season, of course, it was, you know, Nisbet, but it was Nisbet and Yuan, and we're kind of cancelling each other out at times. But I feel like we're a lot stronger in attack now than we were at the end of last season, at least.
Yeah, it just felt like there was one. It just seemed like we had a jigsaw, right? We had all these pieces and we looked really good. We've got Boyle, we've got Yuan, we've now got Venti, who's this big money striker who looks a player. We've got options, you know, we've got Levitt, Newell, we've got Fish, we've got all of these players. We've signed a new goalie. We just needed something to bring it all together. Whether or not, and look, I'm not saying that sacking Johnson was the right thing. Maybe it was. I don't know. You know, we'll never know really. But maybe it just did take a new set of eyes to come in and just bring it all together. And we'll obviously go on to talk about that. But it just looked like for the first time on Sunday that things were starting to come together. We looked pretty solid in defence, which we should do, because if you look at the end of last season when Fish started breaking through, we were solid. We had a solid back line. So I don't know why it's not worked out this season, but we looked for the first time really good at the back. We looked like our midfield was ticking over with Diego. I thought he had a brilliant game, breaking up play, driving us forward. Newell, as usual, was brilliant. And then Boyle, Yuan, caused them all sorts of problems. And then
very unlucky not to score, I think.
Very unlucky. If he, on a different day, he could have had a couple. But and then ultimately we came away and we deserved our 3 points. I think it's the first time we've scored 2 at Pittodrie in a long time. So that shows how good the performance was. And yeah, it just looks like we've got all the pieces. We just need something to bring it together, and hopefully that the new manager, whoever it may be, is the person to do that.
Absolutely. I think, you know, it's definitely something to build on. And you know, it's not something I've seen coming so far this season, to be honest with you. You know, under Johnson, at least, you know, we've looked lazy in midfield. We've looked poor at the back, lazy in attack, and I felt on Sunday it was completely different and completely flipped. I felt we looked so much better. and like you said, solid. The midfield were making things happen. Attack were looking lively and deadly. And obviously, we got our goals and our 3 points to come back down the road, and we're obviously delighted with that. And I think it sets us into a really good place going into the international break. Obviously, we're looking to have a new manager in place for the time that we face Kilmarnock. I think it will happen. There's been a few names flying about, Mark. I don't think you were on the pod when we were talking about the names that we would have liked to have seen in. Sean was a very, very big advocate for Nick Montgomery, who it looks like it's all but done. Obviously we don't want to put the kiss of death on it here and say it's done. We don't know anything, but it looks like from the reports that Nick Montgomery is going to be the man. Are you pleased with that, or is there someone else that you would have rather had in front of him?
Honestly, I don't know much about him. I've obviously listened to what Sean had to say on the podcast about him, which sounded very positive. And his record with is it Central Coast Mariners or something like that. His record's very good. He obviously won the league there against all odds. Really, I think they were pretty big underdogs going into that. And he seems to have turned a few players. I think Jason Cummings was mentioned and things like that. So it's interesting. I think it's a different approach. What we seem to have been going for in recent years seems to be, managers that have managed down south at a reasonable level. You look at, Heckingbottom and even Jack Ross, because he was at Sunderland, and Lee Johnson. They all had fairly respectable careers before they came into Hibs. I think the issue you've got when you recruit an Englishman who's only managed down south, they come up here with a little bit of an arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to, because I'm this, established manager down south, and because the level in Scotland is so much worse, I'm going to come up here and it's going to be easy. I'm going to win the league. I'm going to dethrone, I'm going to overthrow the old firm. We're going to go into Europe and all that. And they think it's just going to be some big party. And they get a shock when they come up and realise how difficult it is with the budget they've got, and they're going up against difficult little teams like Livingston and Kilmarnock and whatnot on the plastic pitches, and it just seems to fall away from them. It just seems to not work out. So I'm hoping the difference is Nick Montgomery's coming from the A-League, which is a lower level in Scottish football. So for him, this is a promotion. This is an upgrade. And he's a young coach, so he'll be coming into this like, this is the biggest challenge of my career, and he's going to come in, he's going to navigate all these issues, and he's going to be fully aware of how difficult it's going to be. And I think you need that. I'm sick of these managers coming in thinking it's just going to be a bit of an easy ride, and it's going to be, because they're some kind of big name, they're going to be able to just do whatever they want.
Exactly.
I think they need somebody that's got a good solid foundation, which I think he does. It's got good man management, good tactical awareness, but somebody that knows the challenge that they're going to come into. And I think he will know full well that this is a huge challenge for him personally in his career, because this will be the highest level that he's managed at.
Absolutely. And I think you touch on man management there, and I think the man management side of things is completely underrated and undervalued by a lot of people who aren't, in the building and, around the team and get the atmosphere. I think that people don't see that really on a day-to-day basis. The last great man manager I think we had was probably Alan Stubbs. People would probably say Neil Lennon was a good man manager as well, but two very different styles of man management.
The worst man manager on planet Earth.
Well, definitely not the best man manager for Flo Canberry anyway, I tell you that. But I was reading up a couple of articles earlier on, and there was one that the Daily Record posted last summer when Lewis Miller signed for Hibs, and Lewis Miller was talking about how good Nick Montgomery's man management style was, and how he owes more or less everything that he's done to him for bringing him through the youth academy and making him a stalwart in that Central Coast Mariners defence, and then obviously getting his move to Hibs. So it's promising to hear things like that even before we were linked with him, because it's an easy story to write if you've got, someone's played in the A-League. Here's what he's got to say about Nick Montgomery. So And you know, I've watched a couple of the videos because I tried to keep a wee bit of a close eye on Jason Cummings when he was down under playing for Central Coast, and there's a lot of footage of him with Nick Montgomery, and getting on really well. And there was a video that I saw. It was after they won the grand final, and Jason Cummings goes to him and he says, "You know, you've changed my life. You know, you've turned me into a much better player and stuff." So I think his man management skills are, you know, pretty good. He's been the Central Coast Mariners coach since 2021. I'm not too sure how you'll look at these stats though, Mark. He's had 60 games. He's won 30, drawn 11 and lost 19. Scored 139 goals and conceded 94. So I'm not too sure. 60 games since 2021. It doesn't seem like an awful lot, but I'm not too sure how the Australian League works in terms of timings and stuff, like when their off season is and that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't really watch the league. I'm not sure how it works. You know, I'm sure, you know, one of the challenges I think that Hibs fans will have is that, first of all, it's a lower level. You know, the A-League is probably a lower level in Scottish football. So, you know, to take a player like, a lot of people are saying, oh, he took Jason Cummings and he made them this good player. I think the reality is that Jason Cummings was always a good player, but he's just moved to a lower level, which has allowed him to go and play. However, I do think that it doesn't matter what level you play at, man management is man management. So whether it's the A-League, whether it's the Premier League or the Scottish League, man management is man management at the end of the day. I've seen a couple of shouts which I find bizarre, is that it's another Sean Maloney appointment. I totally disagree, because Sean Maloney had never managed before. He was only the assistant. He was the assistant at some pretty big jobs like Belgium, and you know, he'd played at a high level and all that. At the end of the day, this guy's been managing since, what you said, 2021 or something like that.
Well, 2021 with Central Coast Mariners, but I think he's been involved in the coaching setup from maybe about 2012, 2013, something like that. So, you know, he's been there for a long, long time.
Yeah, and to say that he's a Sean Maloney just because the A-League is a lower level, to be honest, is a little bit arrogant, because it's...
You look at Ange, how well Ange did when he came over here.
Just because he's not managing in Europe doesn't mean he's not a good manager. You know, I think there's a lot of diamonds in the rough, you know, whether it's the A-League or the over in Japan and Asia and things like that. I think there is a lot of, and I think now, since Ange, I think he's sort of broke the mould a little bit and he's dipped into that market. And now you see a lot of Scottish clubs dipping into the A-League, or, you know, going for some Japanese players, or looking about the Asian market. So it could be that, you know, this is a trend and we start to get these diamonds over from the league. But I think it is really key, good man management, because I think this squad of players has been lacking a good man manager for a long time. And I think that's why we see, after maybe 6 months, when a new manager comes in, it just seems to dip and we just seem to fall away. And I think that is because they maybe lose a little bit of motivation. They don't have somebody there that's keeping up with them. And I think, you know, you can say that about Sean Maloney. Jack Ross was probably a decent man manager. But what's his name? Lee Johnson. It just all seems that they weren't able to keep the dressing room on side. So if Nick Montgomery can do that, if he does get recruited, then I think for me that's half the battle. And then time will tell whether, you know, he's got the tactical awareness and all that kind of stuff.
Well, his tactics that he usually goes for. So, according to Transfer Market, they said that his favoured formation is usually a 4-4-2. It can alter to a 4-4-1-1. To me, it's 6.5 a dozen. That's exactly the same.
It's just a false line, really,
I was trying to think earlier on. I wonder what the best lineup then would be to fit a 4-4-2 with the players that we've got at the moment. Because when me, Sean, and Craig spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, we were saying that, you know, we can't now go for a manager because of, you know, what they say they're going to do. I think we need to listen to a manager's ideologies, a manager's philosophies, the way that a manager wants to play. Look at our squad, and if the two marry up, then it's probably going to be a wee bit better than than it usually would if you just get someone who's got the gift of the gab. I think like Lee Johnson maybe did. So if you look at the squad that we've got, do we have what it takes to fit a 4-4-2?
I think when a manager comes in, though, it should be very much. I mean, it's as the great Sir Alex Ferguson said, it's you that's going to have to change because I'm not going to change. So if you don't change, then you're out the door. For me, that's the attitude that a manager needs to have. I'm coming in with this philosophy. I'm going to try and fit you guys into this philosophy, and if you don't change, then you're out the door. I don't think because for me, that's the sign of a weak manager that comes in, because I think that's what Lee Johnson tried to do. And it shows weakness when a manager comes in and says, right, I'm going to mould to the players that I've got, and I'm going to mould to how you guys perform, as opposed to you moulding to how I perform. For me, it should be a manager coming in, this is a shape I want to play. Here's the players that I've got, right? You're going to fit into my shape, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. If you don't like it, or you're not good enough for it, then we'll move you out the door and we'll bring somebody else in that is. That's how it should be for me. So regardless of the players that we've got, I think, it should be up to the new manager that comes in. I think
it's tough to do that outside of the window, though.
But for me, though, we've got the players to play in a 4-4-2, because I can't remember if it was against Lucerne. We essentially did play a 4-4-2. For me, the best team would be our usual back four, which is Miller, Hanlon, Fish, and Stevenson or Obita, potentially. A midfield four of Boyle and Yuan out wide, with Levitt and Newell up front. And then up top, you could vary between Vente, Doige, and Lefondre. You could also take out Yuan, you could put Obita in. There's players that can come in and you can mix and match. You've got players like Jago if you wanted to play a little bit more defensive, or Campbell if you wanted to maybe get them up the park a little bit. For me, that 4-4-2 that we played against Lucerne, I think it was at home, was our best performance of the season. And we even talked about on this podcast, we need to get back to basics. Let's play a 4-4-2. And I think one of the listeners as well put a question in, why don't we play a 4-4-2? We did it, and it was our best performance of the season so far, potentially matched by Aberdeen.
Yeah, it's difficult. Like it's one of these things. Like 4-4-2 is not a sexy formation. It's not a 3-1-2-3 or whatever. It's not a 4-2-3-1 or a double pivot with a six. It's a basic formation, and like you said, back to basics is probably going to do us a world of good after Lucerne anyway.
But football's a simple game, right? Like football is a simple game. I know it's a cliche, but football's changed because of managers like Pep Guardiola and Jose Mourinho and Jurgen Klopp, and they've all got these unique styles like the tiki-taka and inverted fullbacks and gegenpress and counter-attacking, right? See, at the end of the day, we're not playing Champions League football. We're not playing Premier League. This is Scottish football, right? And I'm not to talk down Scottish football, but you can be basic in Scottish football and still look good. You can play. You don't have to play a 3-1-0-6-9. Do you know what I mean? Like you can play like normal formations, like a 4-4-2. I don't know why modern managers are so allergic to it, just because it's not some 3-5-2 with inverted fullbacks and this and that. And it's a simple formation. It's balanced, and see if you've got the right players and the right kind of tactics, it'll do the job. And we've seen that against Lucerne.
Yeah, and I think the lineup that you've just named there, we've got a very, very good squad on paper. Football, of course, isn't played on paper, but you look at that group of players and you think that that is probably man for man outside the Old Firm, probably one of the best in the division. You obviously you want to compare it to Hearts and Aberdeen. I think man for man, that I'm not too sure there's an awful lot of difference between the sides.
Well, we just pumped Aberdeen, so
exactly.
That's the story.
Exactly. So it's just one of these things, isn't it? Another characteristic of Nick Montgomery is his knack of developing players and getting them from the A-League to European League ready. He's got quite a good catalogue of names here that I've notched down. So I put Jason Cummins in first, and I know he's not going to the European leagues, but he's went and found a big money move to India. He was a massive, massive part of how of how that Central Coast Mariners team played in the last couple of years. You know, when it looked like his career was over after Dundee, he kind of found a new lease of life down under. So Cummins, I think, is a good advocate, like you said. Maybe he just found his level. And then you've got Garen Kuhl, who of course signed for Newcastle, was on loan at Hearts last year. Lewis Miller, who's at Hibs, and you've got Kai Rolls as well, who came from Central Coast Mariners, who's done all right for Hearts in the couple of years that he's been there. And then there's another couple of players that I notched down. Silvera, who plays for Middlesbrough, Triantis, that plays for Sunderland, and I think both of them signed for those clubs this season. And you've got McGarry, who's just signed for Aberdeen as well. And they've all come from Central Coast Mariners. So it's quite positive to see that he's taking these players from A-League level and getting them to European League level, albeit they're signing for Middlesbrough or Sunderland or Aberdeen. But, you know, that's the kind of market that we dip into. So I wonder if he would then kick on any of our youth players, maybe a Josh O'Connor.
Yeah, and I think it's impressive all the more that, you know, a lot of teams don't even look into that market. A lot of teams think because it's outside of Europe, because it's Australian football, that you're never going to find any good players there. So I think it's particularly impressive that he's managed to get all of these moves or develop all of these players to get their moves into Europe, considering that, you know, it's only been quite recent that teams have started dipping into that market. So absolutely, look, we've always, you know, prided ourselves on you being a club that's developing youth players, developing players, and realistically, where we're at, our main source of money will be developing players, either buying them on the cheap or bringing them through the youth academy, getting a good couple of years out of them, and then selling them for 2, 3, 4 million to clubs in the Serie A or the Championship or Premier League or wherever. So if he can help do that, then brilliant, because obviously the more money that we generate with those sales, the better players we can then go and buy and obviously then.
You're absolutely right. And I think that's probably been, you know, along with the man management style, I think that's maybe been the biggest factor that's attracted Hibs to Nick Montgomery. I was quite chuffed actually when I seen us being linked with him. You know, like I said, I tried to keep as close an eye as I could, you know, with the time zones and that on Central Coast Mariners, just with the Jason Cummins link and stuff. I wanted to see them do well. But would you be happy with him if he got the job tomorrow?
Yeah, I wouldn't be, you know, from everything that I've heard, it's positive. I wouldn't be unhappy. You know, I wouldn't be jumping for joy and shouting from the rooftops and whatnot. But I certainly wouldn't be unhappy. I think, you know, it's always the same with managers. Time will tell. You know, he could come in and be absolutely revolutionary and be an absolutely brilliant manager, or he could come in and struggle again. It makes me nervous when we get new managers, because I feel like the Hibs fan base is
We
very
expect a little bit too much.
They're just very impatient. And, you know, those that are most impatient usually shout the loudest, whether it's not so much from the stands, more on social media. You know, I've had to unfollow a lot of the Hibs supporters pages and unfollow Hibs and stuff like that, because the amount of bile that is spewed on these posts. It's like Johnson came in and like one game in, it's like, oh, wrong choice. You see people talking about how we should have never have sacked Sean Maloney, we should have never have sacked Jack Ross, but they're the same people.
That was your burner account. You should never have sacked Sean Maloney.
These were the same people that were sitting absolutely shouting how they need to go and they need to get out of the club and all that. So I just hope, and that, I don't expect, but I hope that if he does come in and he's maybe a slow starter, he doesn't maybe hit the ground running, that we just give him a bit of time before we start spewing all of this toxicity onto him. Because if he does come in and we start booing him and start jumping on social media saying he's another Maloney, he's a clown, he's this and that, what's he going to think? He's going to be thinking, Christ, what have I got myself in here? I should have, you know, I was loved back at home and I've come here and all of a sudden I'm getting chewed up and spat out again. So I just, that's my one hope if we do get him, is that we just
And then after that, I mean, it's not, doesn't then make it a very attractive job for anyone else to take, to be honest.
Honestly, if I was a manager, which I'm not, but if I was a manager, I'd be looking and thinking, Christ almighty, do I really want that job? Amount of managers that we've gone through in the last 10 years. And honestly, it's one of the most toxic. At the same time, by the way, we've got some of the best fans ever. Just look at down in Birmingham, how unbelievable. Our core fan base, right? Our core fan base is one of the best in Scotland.
Yeah.
Like the numbers that we bring, the noise that we make, the vast majority of Hibs fans are absolutely superb. So please don't think I'm not saying that. But the ones that talk the loudest are the ones on like social media and all that, and you just see some horrible, horrible comments about players and managers and stuff like that, and you just think, have a day off, like go and just support the. And do you know what the funny thing is? A lot of these guys that are going on social media will be the ones that have never been to a game. They just sit and spew abuse.
Yeah, it's an easy way to get, rubbish opinions out there, and it happens at every club though. It's not exclusively Hibs. It's every club, and I think a lot of clubs down south have been. I mean, a lot of clubs all over Europe probably have kind of felt that fan pressure from social media. I feel like there was a lot of pressure on Maloney when he went on from social media. There was a lot of pressure on from social media on Jack Ross as well. So it's nothing new, and I think it's just the way that football is. But listen, at the end of the day, Nick Montgomery comes in and he does well, he'll be away in a year. If he doesn't do well, he'll be away in a year.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah, I hope. I'm always pretty on the fence with managers. Like I've never ever wanted anyone to be sacked. I never called for Maloney to be sacked, never called for Jack Ross to be sacked, never called for Lee Johnson to be sacked. Rightly or wrongly, they were sacked. And you just have to go with the flow. At the end of the day, you're going to support the club no matter what. But that's the one thing that I hope is that we just give him a little bit of time. At the end of the day, he's coming from a different continent. He's not even coming from down south, a different country. It's completely different culture, different football.
Well, he is English, mind.
Is he English?
Hi.
Is he actually?
Well, he played for Scotland 21s, I think.
Oh, really? Oh,
he was born in Leeds.
He'll be sound. He should win his first game or get him to fuck.
But no, just quickly before we move on, if not Montgomery, then who's your other preferred candidate?
Terry Butcher, maybe.
Do we maybe need a relegation to get us kickstarting again?
Honestly, I don't know. A lot of the one I'm not even going to say who I would take, but I tell you I wouldn't take, and that is Neil bloody Lennon. I'm sick to death of seeing, he was the best manager I've had in years. No, he wasn't. He got us.
He was for 6 months.
He got us promoted in a league that had nobody else in it. Right, fair enough. He done his job. He got us 3rd place. We should have finished 2nd, but we bottled it. Bearing in mind he had inherited perhaps the best squad of players.
I think we actually finished 4th that season, Mark.
No, I thought we finished.
I think we ended up finishing 4th.
Well, we should have finished 2nd.
I'm not actually too sure. Someone will correct me. I'm sure.
We should have finished 2nd, but anyway, we had a decent season. We got record points and all that, right? And that's what people remember him by. People remember him in a decent derby record in those years, right? He left us in a hell of a position, and I actually think our downfall to where we got to under like Jack Ross and Maloney was because of Neil Lennon. Mm-hmm. He left us. We lost the majority of our good players, which isn't his fault. The dressing room was totally against him. I think where were we when he left? 9th,
8th or 9th, something like that. Yeah, it was.
We were looking awful. So he burnt his bridges with us. For me, he jumped ship to Celtic straight away. Like, there's no way I would take him back. Absolutely no way. I don't even care if he would do well. There's no way. He's burnt his bridges.
Yeah, I think he'd be one of these appointments. I think 50%. If you ask 100 Hibs fans, 50 will say yes and 50 will say no. He's a very, very divisive figure. I don't think personally I would take him back either. But you look at the rest of the names that are being mentioned. I said McInnes on the last pod.
Who would you take if it wasn't Montgomery?
I think Derek McInnes I would take. And I know that the football wouldn't be nice to look at. I know it would probably be pretty boring at times, but he's got a track record of getting results, and I think at this moment in time, results is what we need to kind of steady the ship and then kind of build on it from there. So if it wasn't Montgomery, I'd be happy with McInnes. Don't know about Robinson. People have been coming with the Robinson shouts.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
I
think
get it, but I think McInnes for me has got a better proven track record at being at one of these bigger clubs in Scotland.
Yeah, I think
And
that's key.
he's done it with Aberdeen. So
I think that's key. I think McInnes is probably the most qualified because he's done it at Aberdeen, and he's probably Aberdeen's best manager in a long, long time. In terms of, I know that they kind of got him out the door in the end, and I think the issue
league positions and stuff, like it was,
they
enjoyed a lot of success under him.
The problem when you're a manager that doesn't play great football but gets results, right? It's Nielsen fell into this trap as well. When the results stop, the calls to be sacked come really quickly.
Oh yeah.
Because all of a sudden you go from poor performances but good results and good position in the league to poor performance and a poor result.
Yeah.
It's like, nah, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and it comes really, really quickly that calls to be sacked. But like you said, he's got a track record of being at one of the bigger Scottish clubs, really good record with Aberdeen, and he's starting to do pretty decent at Kilmarnock as well. But I think Robinson's doing well with St Mirren, but he's one of these managers that I just wouldn't trust him with a big job.
I think Stephen Robinson has done really well, and what I like about Stephen Robinson is the fact that he has, when he was manager at Motherwell and now manager at St Mirren, he's got a very, very good eye for a player. And he's managed to bring on a lot of good players that St Mirren and Motherwell have got on the cheap. Mark O'Hara being one. I think, was he the manager at Motherwell when Louis Moult was there? Maybe, I can't actually remember, but I know that there's a handful of really good players that have played under Stephen Robinson in Scotland. So I mean, that's one thing about Robinson I like. But I think I'm in the same boat as you. I'm not too sure if I would trust him with a job as big as Hibs, which sounds mental, saying that I would trust Montgomery with a job as big as Hibs. But
yeah,
for me, Montgomery is a sexier appointment, and
yeah,
that's the bottom line for me.
There's no one really like screaming out to me, it's we absolutely need to get him. But I'm pretty like out of all those options, I would probably, I'm probably happiest with Montgomery. I think it's something new, it's something exciting. Let's see what happens.
Exactly, and I think you talk about the club taking risks and stuff with their managerial appointments, but is it that much of a risk? Is it really? I think it is. It's kind of the same level of risk that you would take with a McInnes or a Robinson. Maybe a little bit more risky, but the guys are clearly a competent manager. The players and the fans at Central Coast Mariners love them. So
I don't think it doesn't matter who you recruit as manager. There's always going to be a risk. There's always an element of risk. We could go and sign bloody Pep Guardiola, and there's always a risk that it doesn't work out for one reason or the other. So there's always going to be a risk. So we may as well just go with what we feel is best.
Absolutely. And if you're listening, Ben Kensel and Ian Gordon, then Montgomery's your man. Get it done. Get it over the line.
I did have a nice long conversation with Ian Gordon in Lucerne in Switzerland.
Yeah, so I heard.
A very nice man. He was. We were both a lot of pints deep, to say the least, and we were both absolutely just burning lugs. But lovely guy.
I'm glad you had a good conversation with him. But we'll move on quickly from the manager chat because we might appoint Derek McInnes tomorrow, and we've spent 45 minutes talking about Nick Montgomery. But our next 5 league games after the international break are Kilmarnock away, St Johnstone home, Dundee home, Hearts away, Rangers away. That is a very, very tough 5 games. And then to add to that, we've got Celtic at home on the other end of that. So that would be the start of the next 5 games after that. Out of 15, how many points really should we be looking at to make up for lost ground?
I think really we should be going for maximum points up until we get to October. I never think we're going to beat the Old Firm, and then obviously Hearts away. I think it's probably one of our worst grounds of all time to go to. So I think we need to be in a strong position going into those 3 games. I think if you had asked, before the season started, a lot of Hibs fans were saying that we shouldn't lose a game up until October. Unfortunately, that's not happened that way. But, the next few games, Kilmarnock away, yes, it's challenging. Yes, they beat the Old Firm there. But if you look at the other results that they've had, they were beaten, I think, who
against Ross County at the weekend.
Ross County beat them. Kilmarnock are one of these sides that show up against the big boys. And I think we qualify as one of the big boys. So if we can go there and play at our best, we will beat them. And then you look at the other games. Did you say Dundee at home? And
so it's Kilmarnock away, then St Johnstone at home, then Dundee at home. So if we're not getting 7 out of 9 points there, at least, I think there's something very, very wrong. With all due respect to St Johnstone and Dundee, but these now are games that I genuinely don't think we can afford to lose, given that we lost the opening 3 fixtures.
Yeah, and I think now that we've not got Europe to contend with anymore, I think that's a big factor. I think it was really tough, and it must be tough to go from these big glamorous European nights playing against, Lucerne away in Switzerland, and then Aston Villa, all these big glamour ties. It must be then difficult to go and play Motherwell away, or go and play, Livingston at home in front of 10,000 people or whatever. So hopefully now that those are out of the way, the league is now our main focus, and hopefully that kind of translates to the players.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for me, that should be maximum points, because not only for the points, but we then go into those 3 games, Hearts away in an Old Firm. Really, you want to go into those games on good form, with a lot of positivity around the club, players that are full of confidence, a good sort of thing around the club.
We can maybe split that into then two sets of 3 fixtures. So from the first 3, Kelly away, St Johnstone at home, Dundee at home, and then you've got the back 3, Hearts away, Rangers away, Celtic at home, which I think is a very difficult order of games to have them in. If we get beat at Tynecastle, then the last place you want to be going is Ibrox or Parkhead.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a test of our resolve as a group. Definitely the new manager, whoever he is or she is, when they come in, we'll see it as a big test, but probably being able to flex their muscles a little bit and show the fans what they can do. If we manage to get a couple of results against Hearts and the Old Firm, then the manager will be back to the high hill. It's a difficult one though, isn't it? So I would say I'd be happy with 7 points from the first 3, and I'd bite your hand off for 3. I'd be delighted with 4 from the back 3.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, right, Hearts are nothing special right now either. You've seen that they got pumped out of Europe. They were beaten by Motherwell at home, which is rare for Hearts to be beaten at home. They were beaten,
especially given their home form of last season. Their home form last season was great.
Their home form against everyone, not just Hibs, but they were and that's the reason why they've been finishing so high in the last few years, is because they're virtually unbeatable at home, apart from the Old Firm. Very rarely does a team come to Tynecastle and get a win, and then obviously Motherwell have gone and done that. So look, we started to get very close to them last season. We beat them at Easter Road. We should have absolutely beat them at Tynecastle at the end of last season. There's no reason why we can't go and beat them in October, especially if we go into it in good form. If they've still got their current manager in, I'm pretty confident, because he's an idiot.
Fair enough. Well, what one are you talking about?
Again, all of them. All 900 of them.
I think they kind of tried to clear it up earlier on. They put out a tweet and said that Stephen Naismith was going to be, the main man with Francis McAvoy as his assistant. But it's a bit of an odd one, isn't it? If you're a Hearts fan, you're kind of scratching your head at that. But what we'll do now, instead of giving Hearts any airtime, we'll move on to listener questions.
Now it's time to answer the Hibs Ramble listener questions.
Right, Mark. First question. John McIntosh, what is for dinner?
I actually had a bit of a Mexican night with Emily. We had fajitas, and I even had a cheeky...
Oh, a wee Corona.
So, yes.
That sounds good. We're having cheeseburgers tonight. We're scraping the barrel. because I didn't really want to go and do a big shop because we've got an awful lot on the next few weeks. I think if we go and do a big shop, then things will just go bad. But did you hear what I had for my tea last week? I had Aldi's vegan duck stir fry, and I tell you what, it was unreal. It was a
You
game
need to
changer.
get the vegan sausage rolls next time.
I might actually
Mate.
dabble in a vegan sausage roll. You know,
I tell you right now, they are genuinely brilliant. You will not
Well,
regret it.
if you haven't tried the vegan duck, like vegan shredded duck from Aldi's, it is top tier. It was wonderful.
Did you get slated for having vegan food?
Not actually, not really.
So it's just
Not
me
that
that
bad.
gets slated for having vegan food then?
Yeah, I think. I don't know. No, I can't really remember. I mean, vegan duck. It tasted like actual duck as well. Like, I don't know how to do it. I said that. But yeah, so there you go, John. That's what's for dinner. And we've actually got quite a lot of questions this week. So we'll start off with Callum, and he thinks, what do we think is now our best strike partnership? Has Doidge made one of the biggest about turns as far as Hibs careers go? I think it's his second huge about turn. Well, so he's been at the club.
You have to feel for the guy because he doesn't do a lot wrong. I think, you look at his miss against Falkirk last season, that might have been the point where a lot of people wanted rid of him, but he always works hard. He's nobody's ever been able to doubt that he works his balls off. So, it is a huge turnaround, and I don't think anyone really thought that it had gone away. We all knew what Doidge was capable of and what he did good. I just think that we thought we didn't really want it anymore. So
yeah. Next is Callum again, actually, and he has said there's been a lot of chat that Gray was part of the previous few managers' failings, but in his last couple of spells, he's shown that he can organise and galvanise the side. Do you think he's now deserving of a place in the backroom staff of any future manager, especially as he gets Hibs? And for me, I think you look at that performance and the way that the team's set up on even at Villa Park, to be honest, but especially at Pittodrie, we looked so much more solid. And if Gray was at any point really a part of the conversation about how he set the team up under Lee Johnson, then setting him up defensively definitely wasn't what he was saying, because we looked like a completely different side.
Yeah, we did. I don't know if it's just a new manager bounce thing, if it's just like the shackles coming off almost, when a new manager goes away, and then it happens all the time. It's like the oldest thing in football is when a manager goes away, all these players come out the woodwork and start fighting for their place that was maybe, they're not guaranteed anymore. And it could just be that, to be honest. That's why it's so important we get a man manager, so that mentality doesn't just go away.
Absolutely.
It could just be them all fighting for a place, really.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Definitely. I think, whoever comes in, as I've said it before, they've got a really good squad at their disposal. And if that full squad are playing their hearts out and trying to earn a place, then it's only going to reflect better in the results, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Next up is Joe, and he says, how long do you think until David Gray gets his own opportunity? Shown especially this time round that he knows how to set up a team against, albeit a tired opposition in Aberdeen, can't be far away from taking his own gig like Bartley if he can't get an opportunity here.
Yeah, I mean, again,
it's a weird one, really. It's a gamble for any team. He's only had a couple of interim spells, but then when do you get your first break? You know what I mean? So
does he want, see, when David Gray's always been asked about the opportunity to manage Hibs, he's always been pretty not quite ready for that yet. I'm quite comfortable in the role that I've got. So does he even want to go away and be the main man at another team? Yeah, or is he now feeling like he's ready because he's had a couple of years under his belt, or does he want some more years as a coach working well? It's interesting though, because Aidan McGeady, I watched one of his interviews, I think it was PLZ or whatever it's called, and he basically said that in training, a lot of things that shouldn't have been happening were being swept under the carpet by Lee Johnson. but David Gray had conversations with Aidan McGeady about how it wasn't acceptable, and David Gray always kept a standard at the club, even when the main managers weren't, which I found really interesting, and I find that really good as well. That would be such a positive thing, because you do need, if you're the manager at a club like Hibs, you need to set standards, or else the players will just take the piss.
Yeah.
So, look, he could go away and he could go and get another club, but it'd just be interesting to find out, is that actually what he wants at this stage of his career, or does he want to, learn his trade a little bit more as a coach, and then maybe later down the line go and manage like similar to Bartley, go and manage an Edinburgh City or a Cove or something like that.
The difference with Marvin Bartley is I feel like since he was a coach at Livingston, he had a constant in David Martindale. And I know that, David Gray is no like a young laddie who needs to be mentored, but he's been on the coaching staff of now, this will be his fourth Hibs manager. So is it fourth? Was he on the coaching staff under Jack Ross? I think he might have been at some point.
Yeah.
So he'll be on the coaching staff of the fourth Hibs manager, and it's a lot of chopping and changing. But it'll be, again, a lot of experience for him. So, it's if someone's willing to take a punt on him, I think he'd be a great manager. But for selfish reasons alone, I think he should be sticking at Hibs for the rest of his life. IMO.
Yeah. I mean, it would be good. And
he'll get his chance at some point, I would imagine.
It would be amazing if he did get the opportunity. I think Craig made the point in the group chat, though, like, how can you sack David Gray?
You wouldn't want his legacy to be tarnished.
If he did go on to become the manager and it didn't work out, how could you possibly sack David Gray? It would just be the worst thing ever, and it would just... And obviously that's not a reason not to make him the manager, but it would just be heartbreaking to see him be sacked.
I know, it would kind of need to be one of these Neil Lennon situations, no sacked but no resigned. Just kind of disappeared into thin air. We maybe need to get him killed off by a hitman or something. Maybe that would be the best.
Or just get him shipped out somewhere and make it out like they made a really glamorous offer. Like Greenock Morton have come in with £1 million bid for David Gray, so we need to just get rid of him.
It's an offer that we can't refuse. Next up, it's Pete, and he says, play players in their actual positions and they don't panic. What a difference. It's as if, football is a massive game of rocket science. Play players in their positions and they'll play for you. Simple as that. I think maybe the players... And see, when people say this, right, I think players don't do it on purpose, but it's kind of subconscious that you stop playing for a manager. You stop giving 100%, but I don't think you realise. I think the faith was lost in Johnson from the players, and you could kind of see it on the park, which is a shame, because like we said on the podcast the other week, Lee Johnson was a really nice bloke when we spoke to him. But it looked like the players had kind of stopped. And as professionals, they probably won't be proud of something like that, but I don't actually think it's a conscious decision from a lot of the players. Some of the players maybe, but
I don't think it's a case where they sort of down tools and stop or try less. I think the difference is see when you've got a manager that you genuinely get on well with, and he's a really good motivational man manager, that sort of coach.
Easier, isn't it?
That gets the blood pumping, the juices flowing, right? The difference is when players have got a manager like that, they'll run through walls for them. They'll throw their body on the line. They'll run through a brick wall for that manager. When you don't have a manager that gets your blood pumping as much as that, then you don't go that extra mile. You don't put your body on the line. And that's not that they're trying less. It's just that they're not throwing themselves at things because they're just not as motivated, and it doesn't get that sort of response.
Absolutely. Here's an easy one for you, Mark, and it's Gav, and he says, what a result. With Scott Brown being sacked by Fleetwood, would you like it if Neil Lennon came in with Brown as his assistant and Sir David Gray as first team coach?
No.
Well, there you go, Gav. There's your answer.
Why? I honestly didn't even realise he'd been sacked. So, I mean, There's
I
your
think
answer.
his Fleetwood team has been pretty poor this season. Anyway, I don't think he did too bad last season, but it's a cutthroat league. You know, those lower divisions in England.
Good luck to them if they decide to form some kind of weird partnership somewhere. Good on them. Good luck to them, but not at
Hope
him.
it's not Hibs.
Yeah.
Next up, Liam actually sent one of these in last week, and he says overrated, underrated, and he's given me a list of things. So I'm going to read you out the list, and I want you to tell me if they are / were overrated or underrated. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Right, Chris Hogg,
Underrated.
Owen Doyle,
Underrated.
Mixu Patalainen, as
As
player
a
or
player.
manager.
I can't really comment as a player. It was a bit before my time, but I mean, he was rated fair because he was a brilliant player. As manager, again, probably rated fairly. I don't think many people think he was a great manager.
That's a cop out if I've ever seen one. Neil
I
Lennon.
can't say like underrated or overrated because like he's rated fairly. As a player, he's rated fairly because he was a good player. As a manager, he was pish.
Fair enough.
What
Neil
are you
Lennon.
saying anyway? Why am I the only one answering? What are you saying?
Because I'm reading them out.
Aye, but you need to answer it as well.
Well, Chris Hogg, underrated. Owen Doyle, underrated. Mixu, as a manager, overrated. Because he brought Derek Riordan back, but he was pretty gammon. The next one is Neil Lennon. I'm saying overrated.
Overrated as fuck.
Then the last two is Bovril, which I think
Bovril.
is underrated.
The drink, Bovril.
Aye,
Underrated.
underrated completely. And a lot of people slate it, you know. I've
Bovril
seen a lot of
class.
Bovril slatings
I love
happening
it.
on the internet these
Going
days.
up to like an away game, freezing cold, you can't beat a Bovril.
I love a Bovril, man. And then the last one is the Old East Stand. And I don't really have an awful lot to say about the Old East Stand because I never sat in it. I've always been a West Stand boy.
I would probably say it's underrated because it was amazing. The atmosphere was unreal.
Yeah, it was.
I never
it
actually.
was
I
really
only
good.
sat in it once when I was a wee boy, but like the atmosphere was class.
Yeah, I'll say underrated as well because I do remember the atmosphere being really good. Watching it from the opposite side of the ground, but that was really good, Liam. And I said to him last week, you better send another one in this week. So this week, you better send another one in next week because I really enjoy stuff like that, you know. Next up, Rudy says, my man of the match probably would have been Lewis Miller, but Jago was really good too, as was the rest of our back line. Like you said, Mark, Boyle gave them problems. They were all class. David Gray's tactics and subs were bang on. My professional analysis. I tell you what, you could get on Sports Scene with analysis like that.
I literally couldn't agree more. I actually couldn't agree more. I think all the players that you mentioned were superb. Lewis Miller, Jago. And I also totally agree that David Gray got it absolutely spot on. Not only
with the tactics and the subs as well.
The subs, I mean, perfect timing. You bring on Lafondra, he scores. You bring on Doyle, he scores. Like you can't get more perfect than that. So
he would have been buzzing going back down the road. Eh?
Yeah.
He would have been sat in the back of the bus with that
big fat Cuban cigar in his mouth.
But it's a big man. It's a big man. Class, man. I love that for Big Dave. Jack Hibbs says Adam Lafondra or Erling Haaland.
Ooh, tough one. I'm going to have to go with Adam Lafondra though. He's got a better goals per minute ratio than Haaland.
Yeah, plus I don't think Haaland has ever scored in Scotland, so
yeah, I can't say he's ever scored at Pittodrie, has he? So
no, absolutely not. Or Fir Park. Yeah. Next up, Ewan, and he says, would you take Dave Gray's manager? Ken, it's only one good result, but if it were to continue, don't think it would be too bad. Not at this stage, I don't think.
I think definitely, one day I'd love to see him in there. I think what he needs is a run at assistant manager, because at the moment he's only first team. I say only, he's first team coach, but what he needs is a manager to come in, and either their assistant manager goes and gets another job and David Gray gets promoted, or a manager comes in with no staff and puts David Gray as his assistant. I think he needs a run as assistant manager, and then maybe one day we could have him on if the next time we get rid of a manager next month or something, we can give him a proper run, because really the only run he's had is like 1 or 2 games, whereas he'd probably need, like, similar to Barry Robson, give it to him to the end of the season type thing, and see what he's capable of.
Yeah, absolutely. Harvey Scott said, seen John didn't ask it last time and still hasn't, so this time what's for dinner? I must have read John's out first. I'm so sorry, Harvey, if you've asked it first, but it's cheeseburgers for me and Mexican for Mark.
Vagitas.
Fajitas. I love fajitas. The Rebel High Bean. This is quite an interesting one, Mark. And it says, do you think, given Aberdeen and Hearts' poor starts to the season, the sacking of Lee Johnson can be deemed to be harsh? I think it can still be considered to be the correct decision given the bigger picture. That's the first, defending Lee Johnson that I've actually seen, online.
Yeah, I do feel for him, because it's no coincidence that all 3 of us have had pretty rocky starts, and all 3 of us have been playing in Europe.
Yeah.
Hibs particularly, because we've been playing in Europe from bloody round 1 against fucking the Andorran team. Then we had Lucerne, and then we had Aston Villa. So we've actually had it worse than anyone.
Yeah.
So considering that Hearts and Aberdeen have been poor as well, and they only had one tie to put up with, we've had 3 ties to put up with, and the League Cup, and then obviously the league games. So I do feel for him. It's a lot of games, particularly considering it was before the season had really started, and still fitness to come and all that kind of stuff. But I just think Lee Johnson was already on thin ice from last season, because we didn't, although we finished the season pretty good, we didn't get over the line. We should have beat Hearts at Tynecastle.
Yeah.
There was some unforgivable results last season, like back-to-back 3-0s against Hearts. 6-1 against Celtic. Just
I think
so
we'll be
much
4-0 against Celtic as well at home, have we not?
Yeah, so there was so much inconsistency. We maybe won 2 or 3, then we'd lose 4. So I think he was already on thin ice. So it doesn't really surprise me that we pulled the trigger at the first kind of opportunity we could, especially because the amount of money that he's had to play with. But I do agree that it could definitely be deemed as harsh, because if we had given him another couple of months, who knows what could happen when we didn't have Europe to contend with. At the same time, though, we could have stayed the same, continued on a downward trajectory, and then we're stuck. It's Christmas and we're rock bottom.
Exactly. I mean, all you need to do is have a look at the results from last season to realise that maybe it's not going to go upwards. It's going to be, up and down and up and down. So I think probably the best choice was probably to get rid. And, we wish him all the luck in the world. Like we said before, he's a lovely guy. Had a lot of time for us when we spoke to him. So, we wish him all the best on whatever he does next. But it's time to look forward for the football club, and hopefully we get that man in relatively soon. Ryan Gibson says, would you give Gray the job? We just spoke about that. Probably not at the moment. James Kinniber has asked, is Lewis Miller good at football, or is Lewis Miller a sexy bastard, or both?
Both.
Yeah, I would have said so as well.
I really like him in that position. I think he's really, really solid. I just hope that he can stay fit. I don't know what was keeping him out of the team last season. It was a really strange one, because remember he played that really good game at Celtic Park. I think we got beat 1, but he was absolutely superb. And then all of a sudden he was out of the team for like months. But he was like on the bench, like he wasn't injured. He was on the bench. He was like there. It was a really strange situation. So I hope that he can just stay fit and just stay in the first team consistently. And obviously,
I think certainly, if Nick Montgomery comes in, then he got the best out of him at Central Coast, so he'll know him and he'll be able to trust him in that right back position, which I think has been a problem area for us, not only this season, Mark, but for a long number of years. Stretching back to when we had Paul McGinn, and that I'm not a big fan of Paul McGinn myself, but we've always had problems in that area. So if we can get someone to be consistently strong, solid, and performing well in right back, then it's a great start, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
Last couple of questions, Mark, before I let you go. Albert asks, brown sauce or ketchup on chips?
Ketchup.
I think it depends what chips it is. If it's chippy chips,
If it's chippy
then
sauce, then aye.
chippy sauce.
Aye.
But if it's like McDonald's stuff, the McDonald's chips, then I wouldn't go for the ketchup. I'd usually go for the sweet curry, but
It's always ketchup. I love ketchup. Always ketchup for me.
I do like
wouldn't put
ketchup.
ketchup on chippy chips. I would put like chippy sauce, but I wouldn't put like HP sauce on chippy chips.
Chippy ketchup is weird, but
I've never really
It's
had
all-
chippy ketchup.
watered down in that. Chippy sauce is the goat.
Aye.
But I do like a bit of ketchup now and then. Won't lie. And finally, Billy is asking, what fictional character would make a good Hibs manager?
Christ.
I'll go first because I've been thinking about this all day. And I think for his tenacity, he doesn't give up. He is determined. He'll go to the ends of the earth for you. I think if we're looking at a point of fictional character, I don't think we need to look any further than Frodo Baggins.
Oh, Christ. I'm actually stumped at this. I really don't know.
It's a great question, actually.
I'm going to think about this all night. I don't know. I was thinking like Iron Man because he's really rich. Like he's like a trillionaire, so he could like
You can pump a lot of money, yeah.
pump money into the club, and like he's pretty intelligent as well. So I don't know. I think
So he would be able to figure it out, I suppose.
he can be like a player/owner, pump a load of money into the club, and then would be brilliant.
He'd stick him selling nets.
But I do want to think about that. I do want to think about that.
Well, you think about it and let me know with your proper answer, and we'll tweet it out. And we'll ask the rest of the Ramblers as well, because that is a wonderful question. I'm glad that we finished on that, because I feel like it's been a half-decent episode. And thank you very much for joining me for chatting Hibs the last hour and a bit.
Thanks for having me, and apologies again for my 3-week hiatus. This will be me now, Mr. Consistency from now on.
Well, you'll be Mr. Consistent, and I'll be probably Mr. Inconsistent, because chances of me coming on after Dusseldorf next weekend, slim, and then the wedding weekend after, slim, and then the week after that, I'll be in Turkey for my honeymoon, so I'll definitely not be on.
Very nice few weeks you've got planned there, Mr. McClendon.
Yeah, it's one of these ones that it's going to come in really quick, and then I'm going to look back and I'm going to be like, I am now completely and utterly depressed and don't know what to do in my life.
Well, Ramblers, please take the time to wish Liam the best of luck for one, his stag do, because he will absolutely need it, and two, for tying the knot the following weekend.
Well, thanks very much, and we'll catch you next time. See you later. Bye-bye.
Let's get ready to rumble.